Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of BrainScratch Searchlight. I'm your host John Lorden, and before we start with today's episode, I have to give a special thank you to GlitterKitty. She pulled together the research for this one and she did a great job. I really appreciate the help on this, so thank you so much. Today we're going to be looking into the case of Timmothy Pitzen. You can see him right behind me on the website for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And the picture on the left is him at the age that he disappeared. You can see they've done an age progression on the right. He has been missing for over 5 years now. So let's jump into the details and see if we can do something to help find Timothy. Missing since May 12th, 2011 from Aurora, Illinois. He was born on October 18th, 2004. He would be 11 now. He is a male, white, with brown hair, brown eyes, and at the time he went missing, I believe he was 4'2" and weighed 70 pounds. If we jump over to the Charley Project, we can get some more details on this, and they did a really good job of pulling together many pictures of Timothy here. You might also note that his name is spelled with 2 M's, just a little bit unique, Timothy James Pitzen. And here they have pretty much the same vital statistics, but they do mention clothing: green or blue shorts, a brown t-shirt, white socks, and a Spider-Man backpack. So let's jump into the details of his disappearance here. Timothy lived with his parents, James Pitzen and Amy Joan Marie Fry Pitzen, in Aurora, Illinois at the time of his disappearance. He is their only child. Without telling anyone of her plans, Amy removed him from his kindergarten class at Greenman Elementary School on the morning of May 11th, 2011. After checking him out of school, she drove to an auto repair shop and dropped off her blue 2004 Ford Expedition SUV at 10 a.m. One of the repair shop employees drove Amy and Timothy to the Brookfield Zoo, and at 3 p.m. she came to pick up her repaired vehicle and drove with Timothy to the Key Lime Cove Resort in Gurnee, Illinois, where they spent the night. I've been pulling some maps together on this just so we can get a bit of a look here. Here is the school that he was picked up from, Greenman Elementary, and you can see Brookfield Zoo is over here. I don't know where the repair shop was in the middle of that. It's not super important to the case. It is a bit of a question in terms of how she got back to the repair shop after their trip to the zoo, but we haven't been able to find details on that. But like I said, it's pretty minimal information. I don't think it's super important. But from the Brookfield Zoo, you can see that they head almost exactly due north, and they wind up at the Key Lime Cove Indoor Water Park Resort. And that looks like it's about, I don't know, I think I'd say about 35 or 40 miles north of the Brookfield Zoo. I do have a little question here in terms of why she's taken her son to that resort, and then they pretty much leave the next morning and head to another resort that is much further north. It's actually in Wisconsin. I don't know if he would even have had a chance to use any of the park features there, but it appears that she's taking her son on this kind of little whirlwind trip without his father knowing about it. So and things unfortunately are going to get stranger from there. Meanwhile, James had reported his wife and son missing after he went to pick up Timothy from kindergarten and found out his mother had taken him. He called her cellular phone numerous times but got no answer. On May 12th, Amy and Timothy drove to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. So if we jump back to the map real quick, they continue their trip north and then cut west to get up here to the Kalahari Resorts. And as you can see, just on this whole length here, they're already going over 200 miles. They're at about 239 miles for this whole trip so far. The following morning at 10 a.m., security camera footage showed them waiting in line to check out. At 1:30, Amy made several phone calls to her loved ones to say she and Timothy were fine and not in trouble. Timothy could be heard in the background and sounded normal, saying only that he was hungry. This was the last time anyone saw or heard from the child. I do have some examples of the surveillance footage that we can look at here. Let me just run a little bit of this for you. So that is Amy, and that is her son Timothy right there. And this is a compilation of several clips that law enforcement had released. It's posted at Daily Herald Clips. I'll have links for it down below so you can check out all the clips for yourself and watch the whole thing in its entirety. This is her later in the evening, and as we can see, her son is not with her. So I'm going to jump over to a bit of a more detailed timeline that was put together by GlitterKitty. Let's check that out. So Timothy leaves school at 8:35 on May 11th, 2011. They go to the mechanic. Mechanic then drops Amy and Timothy off at the Brookfield Zoo. They somehow get back, get their vehicle, and travel north to Key Lime Cove Resort. On 5/12, they headed to the Kalahari Resort. On their way from Gurney to the Dells, they stopped at a Shopko in Racine, Wisconsin, where credit card receipts indicate Amy purchased children's clothes and some toys, and then at a Quick Trip in Johnson Creek, Wisconsin, where they purchased gas and drinks. I'm a little curious because you're going to see by the time we get to the end of this, there's some people that assume that she had planned this, and I'm not sure if she had really planned this and thought this out well, why she wouldn't have packed clothing for him. So to be honest, I'm really not sure if this was an impulse thing or if this was as planned as law enforcement seems to think, but they do have some good reasons for it that we're going to touch on. Front desk and hallway video surveillance shows both Amy and Timothy at the Kalahari. It even shows them at the front desk checking out the next morning at 10 a.m. on May 13th, 2011. Around 1:30 the same day, Amy makes some phone calls to friends and family, but she never called her husband, Timothy's father. Some of the phone call recipients later said they could hear Timothy in the background during the phone calls and that he didn't sound upset or distressed, and some claimed to have actually spoken with him on the phone. Her cell phone pinged in the Sterling Rock Falls area of Illinois. So let's jump back to our map real quick. Here's the Kalahari Resorts. And now we're having their cell phone ping way down here in Rock Falls. So that looks like it is more than 150 miles, maybe 170, 180 miles away. So pretty interesting that for some reason during that 1:30 phone call, her phone is down here, and we know that they left the Kalahari Resorts at 10 a.m. So that would certainly give them just about the right amount of time to drive down here and for her to make these phone calls. Timothy is seen in surveillance footage up until this point pretty much. At 7:25, Amy is spotted alone at a Family Dollar in Winnebago, Illinois. She was evidently alone, purchased the stationery she would later use to write it says 2 suicide notes here, but I do believe that there was 3 written. There was one that was left in the room, one that was mailed to her mother, and another that was mailed to a friend of hers. At 8 p.m., she's spotted on surveillance footage at a Sullivan's food store, again alone. This is also in Winnebago. If we jump back to our map here, where I've got this Sullivan Foods marked here, both stores are actually right next to each other in this area. So we can see we've got the cell phone ping happening down here for some reason. And then a number of hours later, it is worth noting there's a pretty good time gap going on here. We have that cell phone ping happening around 1:30, and then at 7:25 is when she shows up at one of the stores in this area. So that's many, many hours. Quite honestly, I don't know if she was handing him off to someone in this area, or she could have even driven further out. But somehow she gets back here around 7:25 in the evening. And at 8 p.m. she goes to the place that's next to it, the food store, and purchases milk and crackers. Then we get another time gap from 8 p.m. to somewhere between 11:15 and 11:30, and that's when she checks into what was known then as the Rockford Inn. It's now a La Quinta, and it's in Rockford, Illinois. If we go back to the map, that's where this final location is here. And I don't have the two maps combined, but the original starting point, his elementary school, is just due east of this. It's right over here. It's probably about 30-35 miles away. So she's almost done this kind of big hoop, starting here, going to the zoo, going up to the first water park, cutting up to this one, then shooting way south, for some reason coming all the way down here, possibly even further. We have some more evidence to look at with that here in a moment. But then cutting back up, almost like she's heading towards home, stopping here to buy supplies and food, and then stopping in this La Quinta Inn. And unfortunately, the next day, May 14th, 2011, Amy's body was found in the bathroom of her hotel room by hotel staff around 12:30 p.m. She had slit her wrists and throat, and it was later determined that she had also taken a lethal amount of antihistamines. She left a suicide note stating that Timothy was safe with people who would love and care for him, and that you will never find him. Photos of him were also laid out on the bed with the suicide note. This relationship between her and her husband seemed to be a bit strained. She was certainly dealing with depression. She was taking medication for it. Her mother says that she was pretty much dealing with depression for a good chunk of her adult life. Amy had been married 4 times, and her mother says after her first divorce is when she really seemed to start struggling with depression. Now, leading up to these events, her and her husband did appear to be fighting. There was a vacation that Amy wound up taking with a friend of hers. Her husband did not want her to go. She went anyway. And I did find some mention about during their fights that their husband used to threaten that if she tried to leave or divorce him, that he would wind up with Timothy because of her mental problems, that would basically make her an unfit mother. And when you look at this event and just how it went down, she winds up taking this kid out of school, taking him on this kind of whirlwind vacation, buying him toys, buying more clothes for him, and then all of a sudden he disappears and all those items go with him. It certainly does seem like she is trying to strike at her husband in the way that she could hurt him the most, even considering that she's going to end her own life at this point as well. Now, I know several of you out there are thinking there is a chance that Timothy might not be alive. I certainly think there is a chance of that. However, with as many materials as are missing, I think there's a very good chance that he actually might still be alive. So let's take a look at what is missing. First of all, we have a tube of Kids Crest toothpaste, and if we jump back to the Charley Project, they have some pictures here at the bottom of their article. A toothpaste tube that looks a bit like this. Here is Amy. This is the expedition that they went driving in. This is some crafting toys that she had bought for him. You can see it's got some beads, some crayons in there, a Hot Wheels toy set, and a rig. And in one of the surveillance footage videos, you can actually see him playing with that rig. Let's jump back to the list here, though. His Spider-Man backpack, the contents are unknown, but assuming that she was picking him up from school, I think it's probably got some school supplies in there. The clothing that Amy was seen wearing at the Kalahari Resort was also missing. Dark brown or black capri pants, dark purple or blue shirt and sandals. She also had an iPass transponder that's missing. For those of you that don't know, if you live in an area where there is toll roads, you can get a transponder and you place it in your window so that you can drive right through and it will basically automatically bill you. And that transponder is going to give us some more details about the possibility of her planning this in a little bit. And all of Timothy's clothes were missing. That includes what he was wearing when she got him out of school, as well as the new clothes that she had purchased for him on the trip. So it's very odd, and it's tough because we can track her movements a bit, but there are those big time gaps, the one in particular between 1:30 and 7:30 p.m. That is a huge time gap. That is plenty of time for her to do something bad and potentially hide him somewhere. But it is also plenty of time for a handoff of some kind, and I do think that there's a very good chance of that. Here is some footage that was also released of Timothy at home, playing with some Tinker Toys, it looks like. And once again, wearing Spider-Man pajamas. He seems to be a fan of Spider-Man. Apparently, this was not the first time that Amy may have tried to kill herself. Let's look into a little bit more of the backstory here. Around 2003, Jim received a phone call from a hospital in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, stating that Amy was there after, quote, an accident. She apparently had taken a bunch of pills and while sitting on a cliff at Backbone State Park, had passed out and fallen off. A friend of Amy's said that they knew this was a suicide attempt and not just an accident. Amy had also attempted suicide once before after a fight with an ex-husband, Greg Campbell, where she pulled her car onto some train tracks. I do think it's fair to mention that law enforcement doesn't believe that Amy could have harmed Timothy, or a better way of saying it is they can't find anyone that thinks that it's likely that she harmed Timothy. So the big question becomes, how is he out there in the world somewhere with such intense media exposure? And I got to tell you, in terms of researching cases, I've seen very few cases where there is so many articles. He's been featured on 2020 on Investigative Discovery, The Hunt with John Walsh. I mean, this case has really been shown in a lot of prominent locations. How is he being hidden from the rest of the world in this way where no one can get a tip in to find where he truly is? I really don't know, but we do have some theories we're going to cover on that as well. The only motive police seem to have would be that she wanted to divorce Jim and was afraid of what would happen to Tim. No one seems to be accusing Jim of any sort of abuse towards Tim or Amy. I did find a couple of comments that he made himself about how he was speaking to her about the potential of them going through a divorce, and him saying, well, I would never do that, and you would wind up without Timothy and stuff like that. I don't think that that necessarily proves that he's abusive in any way, but when you consider that she might have been already struggling with her perception of reality, dealing with depression and being medicated for that, you don't know how those comments are going to come across. And obviously, this is a woman that felt like she didn't have much of a choice because of what she ultimately did to herself. So I don't think that we can blame him necessarily for what she has done, but I think that there might be things that contributed to this outcome that, to say they're foreseeable at this point is ridiculous because hindsight is 20/20. But I do think that she might have had some decent reasoning to believe that she was in for a lot of pain if she tried to leave Jim. The discovery of Amy's cell phone in the fall of 2013. Amy's missing cell phone was turned back on and was presumably being used. It had been found by a woman in Northwest Illinois who hung onto it and later had it activated for a relative. It was found tossed on the side of the road on Route 78 just north of Mount Carroll, Illinois. There's no indication of any activity by Amy in that area, no cell pings, no credit card receipts, no iPass activity. Why was it there? So let's go back to our map. And we're just going to add Mount Carroll. So we can see we got the cell phone ping happening down here that seems odd in terms of her path of where she wound up. But out here, Mount Carroll is where her cell phone is actually found. So is it possible that this was part of her drive as well? Did she throw the cell phone out the window after making those phone calls around 1:30? I have another theory which I haven't seen people really go into. What about the possibility that the cell phone was taken by the people that took Timothy, or that they found it in the stuff that she had handed off to them and they got rid of it in fear of being traced or tracked by it? I think that it's possible. If you do consider a situation where she had arranged for some type of illegal adoption of Timothy, I don't think that we're talking any money being involved here, so this is likely going to be someone that she knew probably from her past, maybe someone that her current husband wouldn't even know at all. Someone that her family, with them being so involved in this case, that's where this really gets tough. This has to be a friend that like nobody knew about, but let's assume that she had that type of resource, someone that would agree to raise Timothy for her. We know she's buying clothes, she's buying toothpaste, she's buying toys. All those things go missing. It certainly seems like there's a possibility that there was a handoff there. Maybe these people drove in from some location, met up with her in a spot, took Timothy and his belongings, and then left from there, and perhaps they found the cell phone, threw it out the window. I don't know. That's just a possibility. The other possibility is that she did it herself, but somehow that cell phone gets tossed and found at the side of the road a few years after. And here's where we get into some information about this potentially being planned. Amy's other trips to that same Sterling, Rock Falls, Illinois area. On February 18th, 2011, and again on March 20th, 2011, Amy's iPass information indicates that she traveled to or near the Sterling/Rock Falls, Illinois area where those last phone calls were made, May 13th, 2011, for unknown reasons. On the February trip, she appeared to have driven out there and stayed in the area for about 4 hours before returning home. Here are the times that her iPass transponder drove through the tolls. And you can see, if we just look at basically the one going out at Orchard Road toll, that was at 3:58 p.m. And then she came back at about 9:44 p.m. And I have to wonder, is she going out to that area and spending time somewhere out there, or is she just passing through that area and going even farther? I don't know if there's further tolls past this area that would have been triggered by her taking a trip even further towards Iowa. But I have to assume that there might be ways where there isn't toll roads. So I think it's hard to really narrow down a spot, but it does look like she went driving through that area not once before, but actually twice. On the March trip, she appeared to have stayed out there for about 5 hours, and here's the iPass times for that trip. Looks like she comes through Orchard Road toll at 9:11 a.m. and she comes back around 4:30 p.m. And you can see actually this gap in the middle at the Dixon toll. If she comes through it at 10 a.m. and she comes back through it at 3:42, that's really where you get the unknown time. And is she just going to someone's house or farm out in that area and spending time with them? Is she grooming them, talking to them about this possibility of them taking her son? Is her son with her during these trips? I couldn't find information on that. But if she is truly planning this, I do think there might be a chance that she took him on one of these trips. I really don't know for sure. Friends and family don't know of any friends in that area or any place Amy could have possibly been going to out there. She did have friends and family in Iowa, which is in that direction, but the iPass never showed her going farther. There's no way to turn off an iPass transponder, but it does seem to be possible for toll booths and open road tolling systems to miss the signal given off by the transponder if it's not attached to the windshield or dashboard. And I have to ask, what happened to that transponder? We know that it was not found with her. Did she hand that off to the people that were taking him in an effort to kind of help pay for their trip as well? You know, here's my transponder. You can go ahead and use it to go as far as you need to, and I'm heading back anyway, so who cares if I get ticketed or something? Or maybe she paid cash. I really don't know, but it is very interesting to me that pretty much anything that had any value to Timothy disappeared with Timothy, and these other items, her cell phone goes missing, is found off of a roadside, her iPass is still missing to this day. It sure seems to me like the possibility that she was handing off all these items in an effort to take care of Timothy and have someone else take him seems fairly reasonable. She wrote 3 suicide notes in total, as I had mentioned before. One was mailed to her mother, another mailed to a friend, last one left in the hotel room with her body. The articles seem to agree that the hotel note said something along the lines of, "Timothy is safe and with people who will love and care for him. You will never find him." The note to her mother was written as follows, and you can actually find a clip in the description box below of her mother reading this note on the Nancy Grace Show, but I'm just going to read it here for you guys. "Mom, I know that you are hurt and frustrated, and I wish I had something better to say than I love you, but I don't. I never really felt that I belonged here. I've tried very hard to fit in, to be happy, to be good to those around me, but somehow I've always felt apart from everything. Tim helped with that for a while, and maybe if Jim and I had been better, I would have been okay, but everything fell apart this time, and there were just too many pieces for me to pick up again. I can't take the chance of Jim hurting Tim because of my choices, so I've taken him somewhere safe. He will be well cared for, and he says that he loves you. Please know that there is nothing you could have said or done that would have changed my mind. I'm sorry for the hurt and difficulties I know you're going to face. I just hope that you'll be able to forgive me one day. Please let Brian, Kathy, Natalie, Adam, Kara, Sydney, and Phoebe know that I do love them, and it was just time for me to say goodbye. I love you, Mom, Amy. So that is probably the best insight that we can get into her mentality. And once again, from the way this is worded, my personal feeling, and I'm going to clearly label it as that, is it seems to me that she took this kid somewhere and handed him off to someone else, maybe a couple that's not able to have their own kids for some reason. There's a couple of interesting theories around this that we're going to crack into. Let's start with some of these theories. There was blood found in her SUV. However, it seems like the family said that they thought that it was older blood, probably from a bad nosebleed that they know Timothy had in that car. As a child that used to suffer from severe nosebleeds, I can certainly attest to the fact that you can lose a lot of blood in them. And I haven't seen any information about the police thinking that that's suspicious or following up on that angle any further. The knife that she used for killing herself, they basically did a DNA test on it. Only her material is found on there. There is no DNA of Timothy's on that knife. What is interesting is there was something else found in the room, a nearly empty bottle of children's Triaminic. Reports don't specify what formula, but there are 5 available children's formulas, and none are specifically for allergies. They're all multi-symptom cough, cold, flu kind of medications. Was this given to Timothy as a way to subdue him? Possibly, giving him some cold medication, hoping that that would knock him out for the long drive, or maybe even through the handoff to someone else. But it does appear that that medication was found in her room as well. There were no traces, however, of alcohol or illegal prescription drugs in Amy's system. There's been some information released about the tires of her truck, which were tested, and the undercarriage, and it came out with some pretty interesting conclusions. Based on sediments and plant material, the vehicle was stopped for an unknown period of time on a wide gravel shoulder, gravel road, or short gravel turnout either adjacent to or just off of an asphalt secondary road that had at one time been treated with glass road marking beads. I can't believe that they were able to determine all that from testing, but they have even more. In close proximity to the gravel shoulder or road where the vehicle stopped, it backed into a grassy meadow or field to a spot that is nearly treeless. There are birch and oak trees in the general area, but not directly over or at the spot where the SUV stopped. Both Queen Anne's lace and black mustard plants grow in a row along the border of the field or the shoulder of the road. In addition, there is no corn growing in or adjacent to the spot where the SUV stopped, nor is there any indication that the area had been used for agriculture in the recent past. Instead, the evidence strongly suggests that grasses have been the only major plants growing in the immediate area, which leads scientists to believe that it is a meadow and not, for example, a field that had once been farmland. I'm not quite sure if that would include the possibility for hay fields. I don't know what type of grasses. They're not being very clear about that, but I know in my trips to Wisconsin, it's pretty easy to find hay fields out there. There's people that usually have cows in that area and they need to eat something, so I don't know if that's a possibility here. Forensic results indicate that the grass was not cut, which helps rule out a rural residential lawn or a park. There is also a strong likelihood that there is a pond, small stream, or creek in the area. Scientists further believe that the meadow is most likely in northwestern Illinois, with Lee and Whiteside counties as the most likely locations. However, areas in Carroll, Ogle, Stephenson, and Winnebago counties cannot be ruled out. So GlitterKitty and myself, actually, I took a look at Reddit and reviewed some of the fringe theories going on. One of them is the possibility that Timothy was not really Jim's child. Personally, I don't see any evidence to suggest why that's the case. If you were writing a book about this case, it might make for an interesting story angle about why she was afraid for some reason. But he looks enough like his father that I don't think that there would have been any imminent threat of them discovering that they weren't related for some reason. Personally, when I look at those photos, I feel like he looks a lot like his dad, and I don't think there's a whole lot of stock in that theory. One of the other theories that comes up pretty frequently, and I think in one way it kind of helps answer the unreasonable question about how is he being hidden for 5 years now, and how are people not exposed to him in some way? I mean, isn't he being taken to school? Is he not being taken to public places? The theory is that she had potentially handed him off to an Amish community. Once again, I don't know how much to put into that. When you think of the possibility of someone in an Amish community taking a kid and bringing him home, isn't there still some possibility for media to get into that area? Maybe not television per se or internet, but local papers are covering this. I don't know. I really don't have enough experience with Amish communities to know if they truly shut out the rest of the world. But if they do, that certainly would be a reasonable explanation why it could have been so difficult to try to get tips related to Timothy and his whereabouts. I did see also some very light mention about the possibility of there being a cult, in particular in the Wisconsin Dells area. I saw other things that said that the cult leader died 10 years ago, so I don't know if it's still active or not. It does seem to be a thing. I saw a Wikipedia article that mentions this cult in particular, although of course they don't call themselves a cult. But how that would be related to all of this, I'm really not sure. Is there some reason why she would have driven up to the Dells area to meet up with someone up there to arrange for a handoff of Timothy much further south? The logistics just sound kind of nutty to me. I don't know if that's very believable. It seems to me like she knows her son really enjoyed water parks. His grandmother said the same thing. He loved being in the water, and she was trying to give him a bit of a whirlwind, great trip, something very special to remember his mother by, because she knew ultimately what she was going to do to herself for a while. And we can see there are some premeditated steps that happened around this. It does seem like she was scoping out that area for some reason prior to this. But there are just so many questions left in this. This is a real tough case. And please crack into the links in the description box below. I know I didn't use a lot of websites for reviewing this story, but you will find that most of the websites are echoing the same information over and over. Regardless, I'm going to include a bunch of links for you down below so you can crack into each and every one if you'd like. Check them out for yourself. See if you find something that myself or GlitterKitty may have missed. And if we did, please include it in the comment box below. And also let me know your thoughts. What else could have happened to Timothy here? It's tragic enough already, the fact that he's lost his mother. But there is another layer of tragedy that is still ongoing here, in that he has also been removed from his father, and this boy deserves to at least know his dad, if not to be in his custody, and know the rest of his extended family. And wherever he is, I just hope that he's safe and that he gets home someday. And before I sign off on this episode, I did bump into another story a bit like this, where someone was abducted by their biological father, and it took 13 years, but eventually he was found, he was located. These cases do get solved sometimes years and years later. So we're only 5 years into this one. I think there's no reason to give up hope on Timothy, and I hope that you will join me. Please share this information, in particular Iowa, Wisconsin area, of course Illinois. If you know people and have friends in that area, please share this video with them. Let's get some more eyes and see if we can help stir up some information that might bring Timothy home. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of BrainScratch Searchlight. I always say it and I always will. I appreciate each and every one of you. I feel like this is the most important show that I do. So thank you for being a part of that. I'll catch you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Have a good day.